funding models. It was a resolution that was taken by the committee at an earlier meeting. I was very privileged in the last week or so to head to the UAE, and I must say it is astonishing the work that is being done in infrastructure across the world, and how that really drives the economy of a country. So really looking forward to having some fruitful discussions today. Before we start, if I can maybe ask the members of the committee to just introduce themselves and just announce their presence. Thank you very much.
Morning, Chairperson. It's Dave Bryant, member of the committee, and congratulations again on your recent wedding.
Thank you very much, member.
Noba French Mbombo. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, everyone. Peter Johnson.
Morning, everybody. Pet Lekker.
Morning, Chair and colleagues. Basil Petrus.
Good morning, Brett Heron.
Thank you very much, members. I am going to hand over to the department. The PO lets me know that you are all under one roof this morning. Minister, through you, if you can maybe just introduce yourself and ask the department to introduce them as well.
Yes, good morning, Chair. And again, just to echo Member Bryant, congratulations on your wedding and welcome back on home soil. Tasha Simmers, Provincial Minister of Infrastructure. I'll hand over to the HND to introduce the team around the table.
Good morning, Chantal Smith. I'm the head of department for the Department of Infrastructure.
Morning, members. Pauline van der Merwe, acting CFO.
Morning, members. Shafida Andrews, Chief Director, Financial Management.
Morning, Chair. Morning, members. Ndobe Kubingele, Secretariat, below Germany.
Morning, everyone. Mel Curtis, spokesperson for Minister Simmers.
Good morning, everyone. Clive Roos. I'm in the HOD's office.
Good morning, everyone. Carmen Hartnick, Head of Ministry.
Good morning, everyone. Michael Hendrikse, Acting Chief Director, Road Design.
Good morning, everybody. Mujahid Solomons, Deputy Director, Management Accounting.
Yeah, I do believe that is a full house from DOI side, but I know we are also joined by Provincial Treasury. This is a joint presentation to the Standing Committee. If they can just introduce themselves too. Thank you, Chair, through you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Provincial Treasury. In the chat box, and I'm sure we'll be talking to them later. We've got 3 items on the agenda today. The one is from the Department of Infrastructure on its alternative funding models and the current alternative funding models that's being explored. The second one holds with regards to a petition that we received by residents of the Groot Brak Rivier in Mossel Bay, specifically with regards to the Green Haven housing project that is there. And Mr. Themba Kezwa will just give a brief overview for us on that. And then it is the third one is just an announcement from myself with regards to a possible visit that's to be undertaken by the Northwest Provincial Legislator on certain projects. So I am I'm gonna start this morning with, and I'm gonna hand over to Mr. Themba Kezwa just on the discussion on the Green Haven housing petition in Groot Brak Rivier in Mossel Bay by Mr. Barry Jacobs. And Mr. Kezwa will just give us an overview on that petition. Mr. Kezwa, over to you.
Thank you so much, Chair. I don't know if I'm audible also.
You are audible. Thank you very much.
Okay. I'm going to share my presentation. I won't be long. Okay. Okay. Chair, you can see the presentation.
Yes, yes, sir. We can see it.
Okay. Okay. Chair, my name is Themba Keswa. I am from the Public Education and Outreach, the section that processes petitions at the WCPP. And I'm here today to discuss this petition that we've received from Mr. Barry Jacobs. Like you've just said earlier on, I can say that Mr. Jacobs is one of our busiest petitioners. Ever since I came to the WCPP about 5 years ago, he's one of the most prolific petitioners that we have ever known. But quickly, without wasting time, so on the 23rd of March in 2023, we received this petition from Mr. Barry Jacobs in Grootbrak Rivier. So what we normally do then when we receive a petition is to go through the petition to ensure that it falls firstly within the mandate of the WCPP, and then we also collect the supporting evidence that the petitioner could have given to us, and then we follow up with the responsible office that needs to give response to the person concerned. Now, one of the major rules at that time was that before you come to us in the WCPP, you should have gone and done your own work as well, so that we can have all the evidence and support you on something that also you had discussed with the previous office. Now, I just want to go without getting too deep, because we did attach, Chair, the attachments with all the previous communication between us and the petitioner. So in this petition, the main thing that Mr. Jacobs was concerned about was the transfer of ownership of the Green Haven flats to the intended beneficiaries. So there was a delay regarding this process. So the people are living in there, the beneficiaries are living in there, but the property has not yet been transferred to them after a long period. And then he also was concerned that the municipality was not showing initiative to assist other people to receive new public housing in Grootbrak, because they were saying if then they cannot get the ownership, they must at least be in a position to receive housing that can assist them to become independent. And then the municipality obviously was saying there is no land, and he was alleging that most of the land has been sold to properties. But I just want to go quickly, Chair, to the just quickly to the letter. I just want to show you here, because I think it's much more better. If you go to Annexure F, this is the letter that we sent to the municipality there. And I just want to quickly just go through. If you see, it's the Green Haven flats ownership, the delays in establishing low-income housing projects, and then the unavailability of municipal land for home development. So this was the WCPP sending the letter to the manager at Mossel Bay to attend to the issue. Now, the answer is much more clearer here. It makes us understand exactly what happened. So the municipality then did respond. And Chair, without reading the actual letter, but I just want to go through, because if you look at the response, it gives you the reasons why this matter has arisen in the first place. So regarding the Green Haven flats ownership, the Mossel Bay municipality is willing to possibly transfer ownership of the flats to the occupants, but it's discovered that the survey that was conducted in 2010 that the occupants were not willing, after it was explained to them that when they are owners, the maintenance of the flats will become their responsibility. So the municipality did do a survey, but informed them first to say, if you want to become the owners of the flats, you must understand that the whole thing now will have to change. The Americans call it, Chair, a gated community. So it will be something like that. There will be a body corporate, there will be rates to pay, there will be responsibilities in terms of gardening and so on and so on. And the people are saying they are not in a position to take over that responsibility, which then raised a big issue. That was the first thing. Regarding the delay in establishing the project in Grootbrak, The municipality also did explain here that the municipality to roll out a project in Grootbach, there's a process that have to be followed, and they did explain what that process was. And again, the people don't understand this process. I think, Chair, you are aware, since we've traveled all over the Western Cape, that when people see a part of government, they're just expecting it to be magical. So when you respond with these kinds of responses, like Mossel Bay municipality did in here, people just don't understand. They just want what they want, and they really don't care about the other process that need to be done. In terms of the unavailability of land, the municipality does agree that there is land scarcity. And they were saying that the land that they have is not suitable for residential processes. So this answer then, Chair, made it very clear that the people are not really happy with the response. And that's when then they came to us and the municipality responded in this particular way. So when we got all of this evidence, we then sent the petition to the committee of petitions at that time. So you can see here on 30 May 2023, the Speaker did refer to the Petitions Committee through ATC. And then on the 23rd of August, then the Petitions Committee at that time did deliberate on this petition. So that's where we ended the matter for us as the PEO, because once it's in the committee now, we take a step back, and then the committee will then do what is needed to do for themselves. Chair, like I'm saying, I was just rushing, but I didn't want to waste your time. All the info was sent earlier, including all the annexures that needed to be sent via the procedural officer. I don't know if there are any questions maybe I can answer, and my colleague Kaya also is here. We can assist to answer as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Keswa. Yes, I'm going to request if there's any questions from any of the members that they raise their hand. Member Bryant, I see you've got a question.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for the feedback and the information to the official. I just want to find out, in terms of the process that came before the attempted handover and when all the issues were identified, were all of the conditions of the handover properly communicated to those people concerned? Because it appears as if they weren't necessarily aware of this until the last minute, and obviously that then causes additional challenges and issues. I'm happy to hear from the official as to exactly what the process was preceding those issues being identified, because obviously one wants to cover bases and make sure that everybody knows exactly what's what before they enter into any form of potential agreement. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Member Bryant. Member Petrus, I see you've also got a question.
Yes, Chairperson. I want to know, was there any in-person discussions or presentations? And if not, I will propose that we have an in-person discussion or maybe a visit to the community when we are in the Garden Road.
Thank you very much for that, Member Petrus. Member Heron.
Thank you, Chair. 2 points. I agree with Member Petrus that I think I see on the plan that there is a proposal to visit the Garden Route district, and so we could deal with engagements while we are there. So I would support that. And I would like to just make a comment to the public engagement officers. But I think if they present a petition to a committee, it shouldn't come with an opinion about the viability, the motives. I really didn't appreciate Mr. Keswa's, I don't want to call it an attitude, but the way in which it was presented, as if when you go to these communities, they expect miracles. And I think a petition must be presented objectively and agnostically without the oversight or the public engagement office in inserting that kind of language. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Heron. Yeah, to Member Petrus and Member Heron's question, we are going in the resolutions, be having the discussion. There's two suitable or two dates that we're looking to. One is the 30th of July or the 6th of August. So the committee will be deliberating in the resolutions on a suitable date to meet specifically on this Greenhaven petition. Mr. Keswa, I don't know if you would maybe like to just answer to the questions that the members had.
Thank you so much, Chair. Thank you, Member Heron. I appreciate your input there. Thank you so much. I'm going to just hand over to Mr. Mkunyana to just take the other questions from the members. Kaya?
Thank you very much, Mr. Keswa. Chairperson, my name is Kaya. I'm the Senior Officer in the Public Education and Outreach Unit. Am I audible, Chairperson?
You are audible, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe just to answer on Member Brian's question, whether if all the conditions prior to us referring the petition to the petitions committee were properly communicated with the residents. So from our engagement member with the petitioner and also consulting the municipality, there are two versions. There is a version which is detailed in the written response by the municipality to say this is what they've done, the survey, and this is what they inform the occupants of the flats, and then this is what they said they don't want to transfer ownership. And obviously, this is something that Mr. Barry Jacobs contest. And then so as I think as Member Heron mentioned, so for us then we did not really want to decide what's true or what is not true, but we've sent all that communication and the evidence to the petitions committee to evaluate and determine the veracity of those claims. So we did consult and you will in the annexures as well that there are email correspondence between the petitioner and the municipality on those issues. So for us, we took the allegations, we put it to the municipality, they provided us a response. We've then put a report together with the view of the petitioner and the response for the consideration of the committee. Chairperson, I'm not sure if that answers the question properly, but I'm happy to clarify if needed.
Member Bryant, does that answer your question?
Yeah, somewhat. And look, I mean, forgive me if I may be missing something here, but I think my question is more just in terms of, seeing where the process was held up, which was where the residents or the potential new owners discovered that they'd be liable for these costs. That was obviously later on in a process. So, what I'm trying to establish is the department confident that they have evidence that all of those conditions were communicated to those potential new owners at the beginning of the process? That's effectively what I'm trying to establish.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you, Chairperson. So the process that we had, Member Bryant at the time, which was outlined in the petitions directives that we had followed, we've received the complaint as explained by Mr. Keswa. We've sent it to the municipality, and the Director of Human Settlements at the time responded to us in that manner, which was shown here, about the survey and all of those issues. So that is the kind of evidence, but whether if this was communicated prior that member, we didn't really ask. We've limited our involvement to the questions that were raised in the petition, and that was a response that was provided to us. And that response, Chair, for us, I mean, at the time, the role was to gather all the necessary information so that when this matter comes before a petitions committee, they could be able to see the version of the petitioner and the version or maybe the response from the municipality. And the petitions committee, as you would have seen in the last slide, that they were engaged. They had a meeting first, and then they also had a meeting with the petitioner to also just get a clarity on these issues. Yeah, so beyond that, we don't have any other evidence except what was written to us. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, so I believe this petition obviously lapsed in the old Parliament, and that's why it's being revived now. Thank you very much for the overview. I believe that all of these more detailed answers will also be given to us as per our resolution, either on the 30th of July or the 6th of August. I fully comprehend and understand the various views within the petition. I think there is certainly some challenges when people receive these properties with regards to the costs and how the upkeep of those properties should be done. Yes, if there is any further questions from any of the members, you are welcome to raise your hands. Alternatively, we can move over to the second point on the agenda. And with the lack of, or with the no hands that I currently see, I really want to thank Mr. Kezwa and your team. It is duly appreciated. Thank you very much for the overview. And we will certainly be giving this our full attention once we make the resolution, and be sure to engage from our side as well with the members of the petition on this extremely important issue. Thank you very much. We will now be moving over to the second agenda point, which is a briefing by the Department of Infrastructure on its alternative funding models and the current alternative funding models that is being explored. Members would remember that this also came from the presentation on the 2050 plan, which is something that I found extremely exciting. I really look forward to understanding and hearing the questions from members on how we challenge the fiscal challenges that there is and the growing demands of infrastructure in the Western Cape. Minister, over to you. I'm not sure who will be handling the presentation, and or if you will be giving a introductory session, and then you can maybe hand over to whoever in your department will be handling the presentation.
Okay, now, Chair, I will be doing some opening remarks, and the presentation will be done in 2 stages. First by Provincial Treasury, and then DOI will then supplement thereafter. But again, Honourable Chairperson, members of the committee, but also colleagues, thank you, Chair, for creating this opportunity for my department and our partners, Provincial Treasury, to address you this morning as we will brief the Standing Committee on our efforts to explore and implement, I must emphasize, and implement alternative funding models for infrastructure delivery in the Western Cape. We gather today at a time of impeding fiscal constraints, as we saw the tabling of Budget 3.0. We see a growing population, I think above all, the rising service delivery demands on our province, but more so on our infrastructure. We all recognize that additional funding avenues are no longer sufficient to meet the scale, but I think more importantly, the urgency of the challenges we face in the infrastructure space. A chairperson, we are not standing still. We soldier on, and we do everything we can to future-proof our province in partnership. As a government focused on good governance, delivery, and innovation, we are compelled to think differently about how we mobilize resources to build, but also to maintain the infrastructure that supports social and economic development. That is why the Western Cape government, through Provincial Treasury, has developed a robust, alternative, and blended finance framework. This framework is anchored in the Western Cape Infrastructure Framework and aligned to the Growth for Jobs strategy. It is a tool to unlock new capital, to de-risk projects appropriately, and accelerate development without compromising our provincial fiscal sustainability. Importantly, it gives our department clear guidelines.
Member Petrus, your mic went on. I'm not sure if you're going to send us a chicken mayo or ham and cheese as well. But yeah, if you can just mute yourself, please.
Luckily for him, I don't eat mayo, Chair. It is a tool to unlock new capital, de-risk projects appropriately, and accelerate development without compromising our fiscal sustainability as a province. Importantly, it gives our department clear guidelines on how to identify viable projects, select the right financial instruments, and navigate the steps from planning, but importantly towards navigation. Chairperson and members, the Western Cape Department of Infrastructure is already utilizing this framework with a view to not only navigate fiscal constraints and use available capital more efficiently, but also attracting private sector participation to accelerate and improve service delivery in our province. This is about delivering better and delivering more. It's about building infrastructure faster and smarter. It's about leveraging partnerships and innovation so that we can deliver to the people we serve in our province. Honourable members, this morning, officials from my department and Provincial Treasury will take you through the models we are currently exploring, the pipeline of projects under consideration, and the steps we are taking in partnership, to ensure that despite the challenges we face, we will continue to deliver to our people in our province. And as we move forward, with your support, insights, and oversight, I believe will be vital in this journey. This is a journey that requires collaboration across party lines, spheres of government, and sectors of society. We are committed to building a resilient province, to keep on innovating, and to ensuring that the infrastructure we deliver today lays the foundation for a prosperous, more inclusive future Western Cape. Thank you. I'll now hand over to the Provincial Treasury team who will lead us into the first component of the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Chair, for the opportunity. So my name is Chad Capon. I'm Deputy Director in the Provincial Treasury. And this morning, I'm just going to be taking you through our alternative and blended finance framework. From the outset, just to give some background, before we, sorry, I am pressing next on my slide here, but it's not moving. Give me a second. There we go. So leading up to this, the launch of our ABF framework, the ministry actually had, in conjunction with the Provincial Treasury, had a meeting with a number of key stakeholders. This slide is just to kind of show you who some of those stakeholders were. So World Bank, German Development Bank, German Consular General, other Consular Generals, other ministers within the Western Cape, and then also the new development bank. So looking at that capital and the capital that BRICS can bring into this scenario. And then in terms of the local financial institutions, you're seeing the usual suspects of the big four there, international and development finance institutions, KfW, again, AFD, France, some asset management firms, local there, 91 Asset Management, and then our local development finance institution, DBSA. And Chair, just to pause here and say that these are not preferred stakeholders in any way. These are just stakeholders who were met with. And this is really about going out and sounding the market and sounding to say, what is it that your requirements are? What are you looking to invest in? And what is your appetite in specific sectors? And really understanding how that would then inform the ABF framework. So moving on to the launch itself. So the launch happened on the 5th of April. It was, yeah, we were really happy with the number of attendees we got. Western Cape government was well represented, as well as external stakeholders. We had quite a few of the stakeholders I've actually just gone through at the event in person. And yeah, post that event, we really had a significant interest. Multiple stakeholders were expressing enthusiasm and commitment to ongoing collaboration with us as we talk through where we work together to create shared value and really do things that, you know, the private sector and the public sector can't do independently. That's what this is about, is saying how can we come together to do more and do things that we couldn't do on our own. So in terms of the next steps from that launch, we are continuing to have fruitful conversations with those stakeholders, and we are working with them on the pipeline and bankable portfolio that DOI have actually put together as part of the process that the Minister was talking about earlier. And there are some really exciting conversations happening in that space. So then just to give the background, that's why I went through these previous 3 slides, but now to really get into the framework. Yeah, what is it? Why do we need it? And what will it help us do? So just to start off, I think it's always good to start off with definitions in this space, and then why this framework is needed. So if you look on the left of the slide, what you'll see is how we've defined alternative finance. And really what we're saying here is that alternative finance does not equal exotic finance. It's really non-traditional finance used to fill funding gaps in the public sector. And you have different types of finance: public finance, which I think we're all quite familiar with; private finance, which we know is coming from private commercial lending institutions and banks; project finance, which is almost an instrument of alternative finance to raise funding and finance at a project level rather than lending to a larger institution; and then concessional finance, which is really where your development finance institutions come in, both international and local. So DBSA giving a preferential interest rate or grace periods. And then what is one of the major categories in this framework that we're targeting is blended finance. And really, as you can see by those arrows, what we're looking at there is a blend of public, private, and concessional finance to, and I'll read the definition here. So blended finance is the combination of catalytic capital from both public and philanthropic sources with private development and multilateral financing. And what it's trying to do is increase the investment in public goods and services and drive sustainable development and share risk. So the private sector, what risk are they good at managing? Let's share that risk with them. The public sector, what risk are they good at managing? Let's share that with them. And so by doing this, we're strategically leveraging our limited public funds to mobilize finance from outside the provincial fiscus to bridge funding gaps for high impact projects in the Western Cape. So understanding a bit about those definitions and what we're dealing with, why is a framework needed? Well, there's the initial reason of why we need more new money. And that's because we've got constrained fiscal space, rising service delivery demand, and we know we have infrastructure backlogs in the Western Cape. And so it's about saying, well, what can we do to find money from outside the fiscus to help us meet those demands? Then as Treasury, we understand our mandate is to make sure that this money is governed well, that this process is clear, that our departments know how to do it, what not to do. And so we're enabling them. And this is what that framework is about, is enabling our departments to have a legally anchored guideline for identifying projects, selecting the right blended and alternative finance instrument, sharing risk prudently, and unlocking that new money without jeopardizing the Western Cape's fiscal sustainability. So moving on, where does this framework fit in the broader context or policy landscape of the Western Cape government? And just to emphasize here, Chair, is that what we're saying is that this is not a bolt-on. This is something that is integrated into our planning system. And that's important because you don't just want kind of projects added ad hoc. We want them integrated into our priorities and screened against those. And that's where the Western Cape Infrastructure Framework and Strategy and Implementation Plan are also really well designed, and they have their prioritization criteria and matrix that does this. So at the top, you'll be familiar with those, the PSP, the new PSP, our G4J, and the Western Cape Infrastructure Framework. And then you'll see, obviously, the 4 portfolios coming out of the PSP. Then at a national and provincial governance level, we've got our fiscus, but then we're wanting to include these additional sources of financing. And then essentially, you're wanting to make deals in the alternative and blended finance space. So that's all governed by DORA at a national level, the PFMA at a provincial level, and then the Borrowing Powers of Provincial Government Act, and reference to the Loans Coordination Committee at a national level. So what the ABF policy framework aims to do is guide our departments on how to mobilize this capital while maintaining fiscally prudent and compliant, importantly, with the relative legislation in these areas. So the framework itself goes into setting out what are some of the options, what are some of the instruments that we can use to fund projects in the Western Cape, both infrastructure and non-infrastructure, so social programs and programmatic type interventions. And what we're saying with this slide is there's a range of options. This is not comprehensive, but this is a sort of prioritized list of options. And it's important to understand how we've categorized it. So we've categorized it into on-balance sheet and off-balance sheet. And what that really means is that on-balance sheet is where the funding or liability is taken directly onto the government's balance sheet. And off-balance sheet is where the financing, the agreements are made and then raised at a project level or by a third party that isn't government, with no or limited recourse to the Western Cape government's balance sheet. And these two categorizations of instruments are helpful because one requires a lot more due process because of the national legislation, and that's the on-balance sheet instruments, those instruments that have a direct implication for our balance sheet. But the off-balance sheet instruments require less due process, and the legislation there is not as strict. So there's more room for innovation, but obviously we still want to govern those, and I will talk through that later in the presentation. So now that you've got a long list in your minds in some ways of those instruments and what is available to the Western Cape, what the framework did was work on some best fit blended finance instrument for the Western Cape's key sectors. Now, these sectors also align to the Western Cape Infrastructure Framework's key sectors, as you'll notice. And what we're saying with these is this is not a prescription from the Provincial Treasury, but it's from, we've done some work, we've done some analysis, we've done some case studies, we've done our research. And in these particular sectors, these are some of the most appropriate and best instruments to use to raise alternative and blended finance to achieve our priority policy objectives in these sectors. So the nature and requirements for an ABF project will differ per sector here. And that's why each one of these instruments is actually quite different. So some you'll see repeated, but otherwise they're actually quite different. And what the framework does is it essentially is giving our departments a versatile toolkit that balances innovation, as I was saying earlier, while still ensuring fiscal discipline to meet the diverse project demands that come up, because a lot of these things and the dynamics that come up at a project level are unique and idiosyncratic. Now, you might all have had a question while I've been presenting this, that what about the projects though? You know, you have to have a project in order to go and get finance. And that's where the strategic pipeline development comes in. And this is where we're working really closely with the DOI. Treasury was part of the process of writing and helping with the strategy and implementation plan. And so there's an integration of our ABF project pipeline and the Western Cape infrastructure implementation plan and its pipeline and portfolio of bankable projects. So what we're saying here is in each one of these sectors, there will be an ABF project pipeline. And as departments are coming up and originating those projects, they will be submitting them to Treasury and to the DOI to create ABF project pipelines in the specific sectors. So they'll be required to submit these projects through the planning and budgeting process into a central project pipeline that's going to be complemented by departmental and public entities infrastructure planning documents, which we also know exist. And at this point, I think it's important to say that we also acknowledge that there are existing projects in the pipeline that may be suitable for ABF. And at that point, we can then say, well, let's reconfigure these feasibility studies, the business case slightly, so that it appeals to the kind of financiers that would finance an alternative blended finance project. We're not saying you have to go back to the drawing board entirely, and that's where the integration with DOI is important and fruitful. So all the non-infrastructure related projects will go through the relevant policy steering committee and then to Provincial Treasury, whereas the infrastructure projects have their own process through the IMC as well as through existing structures. So in sum, the ABF framework provides guidance to departments on preparing and implementing these new ABF projects. But as I said earlier, there's also this ability to then adjust existing projects within the to alternative and blended finance. And so, Chair, at this point, and members, here's the strategic pipeline development. Now, this is quite a lot of detail, and you know, we're happy to share the framework with the committee hereafter. But I really want to focus on the first 8 stages of the alternative blended finance project process. So this is kind of talking you through how that pipeline is actually populated and managed. So the department identifies the potential project and conducts its internal screening. Really, the departments are the originators of these ideas. They know their business well. They know how they can best serve residents, and they also know what innovations they already are doing that might actually already align with alternative and blended finance mechanisms and be amenable to those. So, and then it goes to pre-feasibility and concept development. So a bit more effort, a bit more research, a bit more analysis to study the outline and the project and the scope and the costs. And then this is key because it goes back to on balance or off balance sheet. At stage 3, we talk about, okay, is the conceptualized instrument, now that you've done a pre-feasibility, an on balance or off balance sheet instrument? If it is an off balance sheet instrument, we don't actually need to go through the next steps, because that off balance sheet instrument doesn't have to go to the National Loans Coordination Committee, for example. And the off-balance sheet instrument really more falls within the realm of responsibility of the accounting officers of our departments, and Treasury oversees and assists in those projects. But it is not an on-balance sheet instrument, which means the province is not actually taking a liability onto its balance sheet. And so that's important to emphasize, because at Treasury we're trying to enable, and with this we are enabling. We're not putting up more red tape. And that is important, because if it's an off-balance sheet instrument, it's actually not a very bureaucratic process. So moving on to, if it is an on-balance sheet instrument, what is it that needs to happen? So there needs to be, in principle, support obtained from Treasury and from PTM, and then a full feasibility study actually done on this project. Thereafter, that feasibility study is reviewed, and the Treasury will approve. At this point, what might happen is it might be sent to the National Loans Coordination Committee for an in-principle approval, because that communication is very helpful if we eventually get to the point where they have to approve everything. So it's come across their desk, so to speak, at stage 6. Then stage 7, transaction structuring. Now, I think many of my infrastructure colleagues in the room will be familiar with this. This can take time, sometimes 3 years, sometimes 4. And so when we integrate this ABF project process with our budget process, we need to understand it's not going to happen in a linear way, because we have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 need to happen all within a calendar year, whereas this project process will not happen within a calendar year, especially because of the transaction structuring and how long that takes, the negotiating of the deal, who shares the risk, what are the terms, etc. But once that has been completed, the project can then enter into budget process phase 3 for approvals, and if procurement is required, procurement processes can launch. And so, Chair, this slide is a bit more detailed and it's not applicable to all the projects. So in the interest of time, I'm going to move through this. If we have any questions related to it, we can come back. So all important, how does all of this fit into our existing processes at Treasury? And I think this is where we've put a lot of effort and thinking into this. So phase 1 of the budget process aligns to the steps 1, 2, and 3, and 4 in our ABF project process. And that's really about your evidence-based planning. So it's getting your feasibility studies, your concepts, doing the research to understand, is this a viable project? Will it make an impact? Does it have additionality? Then we move into phase 2. That's your MTBPS and your adjustments budget. So mitigating in-year financial or fiscal risks, rather. And what we're saying here is step 5 and 6 of the ABF project process quite naturally integrate into the phase 2 of the budget process. And then, as I was saying earlier, only once step 7, so only once step 7 is actually completed, that transaction structuring, which takes time, does the ABF project re-enter the budget phase. And this is to receive that final approval for procurement launch or the loan terms signature. And that's when it's entered into the budget, and it can be accounted for going forward as a liability if it is that, or a contingent liability if it is that on the province's balance sheets. Finally, Chair, this is my last slide. How is this going to be governed? So with this, I think I would like to kind of use a metaphor of what it takes to get a plane off the ground and back onto the ground. And here, our line departments are our pilots, really. And I think the Provincial Treasury plays the role of the control tower, making sure that the plane doesn't crash into the fiscal ceiling. And then your TPLCC, which is your Technical Provincial Loans Coordination Committee, they play the role of the pre-flight check. Okay, is everything all right? Can we move? Is this plane ready to go airborne? Does it have enough fuel, etc.? Then your PLCC and Provincial Top Management, so that's the Provincial Loans Coordination Committee and Provincial Top Management, they are your air traffic controller, strategic direction, ensuring that this isn't a duplication, that there's coordination, coherence across the projects and prioritization. Then Provincial Cabinet, which are really sort of the FAA in this situation, approving and setting the standards and governing things in that way. And finally, your National Treasury, which are really there to add that final tick. The National Loans Coordination Committee and the National Minister of Finance, according to the Provincial Borrowing Powers Act, must approve all loans, all lending or borrowing of provinces. And with this structure, what we're really trying to do is ensure that we have strong central oversight, but we have decentralized project origination and execution, because we don't want to hold our line departments back too much in bureaucracy and red tape. They know their business best, but we want to ensure that the governance is also there and in place. Now, how does this fit with existing governance structures, Chair? On the right, you'll see there, so Growth for Jobs and Infrastructure Ministerial Committee at a cabinet level will have sight of what ABF projects are coming through, approvals of those, synergies with other projects, potential grouping into programs of projects. And on the other side, Innovation, Culture and Governance Ministerial Committee will manage the non-infrastructure projects, such as a social impact bond that DSD is running, for example. And going down at a lower level, so we've sort of seen how at the higher level these are integrated. We understand that a lot of infrastructure, which will be a lot of what is financed by alternative and blended finance, lands in the municipal space. This is a reality. That's the land. They're the ones who own the land, and it lands there. So coordination between the Municipal Loans Coordination Committee and our Technical Provincial Loans Coordination Committee is there to ensure integration through municipal and provincial alignment. And this is especially important for projects on the borders of municipalities, where you can actually say we need to coordinate, and we can then actually achieve economies of scale, or we avoid wasteful and fruitful expenditure. And I think in this area, the regional planning group, which is chaired by DEDP and co-chaired by DOI, is really important to also ensure this municipal provincial coordination. With that, Chair, that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Chair, if I may, at this stage, should DOI do their presentation, or would you rather ask questions on what PT has presented and then move on to my department?
No, Chairperson, sorry, Minister. I think let's handle both presentations and then deal with the questions, because I do think that there is a lot of synergy between these presentations, and that might influence the way that we structure our questions. So that would be my suggestion. Member Mbombo, I see your hand is up.
Thanks, Chair. I hear you have already ruled around that. However, because what they are presenting, it impacts on the PFMA, generally on the funding aspect of it, which is very crucial, because what the infrastructure is going to present is in terms of how they apply what the Treasury is saying. So for me, it will have been crucial for me specifically, if we could probably just take some questions, if there are any, I do have on this, or we have to wait, because the infrastructure is about application of what is presenting. But for me, it's important to get into understanding on this funding model first foremost, before it gets applied to various departments. But those you have already indicated the ruling, then move with the majority. But I would have wanted to talk about the funding model.
Yeah. Okay. Is there any other comments from any of the members? I am more than happy for you to handle the questions specifically on this. It is 100% with me. I just thought it might be easier to pull the two together. But I see there is other questions. Member Heron and Member Lacker.
Chair, just to say that I agree with Member Mbombo that my preference would be that we deal with questions to to the Provincial Treasury now.
Okay, Member Lacker.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning once again. I'm actually echoing the same sentiments with the two speakers. Thank you.
Okay. I think let's handle it that way then. So questions for Provincial Treasury. Let's deal with the questions then. Minister, we are going to be handling just the questions on from Provincial Treasury side then now by the members, and then we'll go into the department's presentation. Okay, so any questions? Member, I'm going to start in the way that maybe the members spoke now. Member Mbombo, then Member Heron, and then Member Lackett.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I do understand that the current financial status, fiscal framework around the country throughout, it's a kind of the same situation when during COVID, it meant that the current revenue, the country revenue wouldn't be able to make us deal with the COVID. Therefore, it was necessary for the country to borrow all those 500 billion, whatever money is outside. However, we are aware that these are not donations. These are the monies. These are the loans. Whether it's 2% interest rate or whatever, it does. Ideally, you shouldn't be actually borrowing money. We have seen studies are all over where you can see how countries that have utilized most of their budgets, actually their revenue coming, whether it's from the IMF and the World Bank, will find that they are still indebted throughout all their lives up to the situation where they have to trade in some of the assets of their countries to be owned by the loan sharks. So therefore, in an ideal situation, we shouldn't be borrowing any monies. However, because it has been said that in order to fast track the economic growth through specifically getting more people to be employed, it will take us long. And I've seen the BFI specifically in terms of the projects throughout the country that they will need to build. We'll find that most of them, they are probably when we are no more. You get others where they'll be implemented in the 2040s, just to make an example, the Joster Hospital, where you'll find that it's further down there. So therefore, if the province has to borrow money to build the Joster, I'm just making an example, then let it be. But having said that, as I indicated earlier, that it's not ideal, but I do understand. So for me, what is I would want to know is about, in terms of the section 63 of the PFMA, it talks about the executive authority where they have to stick to the vote that they have been assigned to. At what extent now these monies will also form part of the vote of that particular department. And as we know that in terms of the section 21 of the PFMA, it talks about all these monies, all monies anyway, should be paid into the provincial fund. So, and it links to the section 217 of the PFMA that talks about the monies where it talks about the fair, equitable, transparent, and competitive, and all of those. Now, at what extent that we as the people who have to make their government account, these will also be added or be seen in terms of each and every department, so that we could be able to see in terms of this is the money that comes from the National Treasury, this is the money that comes from the borrowing, because the PFMA does mention that part of it. And you also mentioned social impact bond. I'm coming from the health department, the biggest, also in terms of where you'll get many of the loan sharks. I'm putting inverted commas, not all of them are like that, where everyone will have a beautiful idea how they could be able to give you money in order to build that hospital. And then when you look around that part of it, you'll find that at the end, while they can fast track to build a hospital or clinic using their own monies, but at the end of it, when some of us are not there, you'll find that actually it will have a negative impact on the anti-SARS, because you'll be indebted throughout as the government to that loan shark. So the issue of the social impact bond, which you said that the social development is attempting to do it, we explore that in health, because we were going to do social impact bond on the child health together with Betha Center for the UCT. Because at the end, we realized that actually it will be ideal, but it doesn't mean that we may not pilot at a smaller scale. But at that moment, it yielded no benefits at all. So in summary, what I'm trying to highlight is about, I want to make sure, and lastly, actually, the country is servicing almost 70% on the debt, which is they've been borrowed, the whole country, South Africa, they've been borrowed. So the money that the revenue we get, we have to pay back the money to all the inverted commas, the loan sharks. So how at what extent that we are looking at the risks in regard to the borrowing, taking into consideration that the country is servicing a debt. And also, secondly, at what extent that you apply PFMA Section 217 in terms of the transparency. Also, transparency also in terms of which of the lenders, borrowers. English is too much for me, so I always use this interchangeable borrower. So, but at what extent that you are even transparent, like if you go for the DBSA or you go for the World Bank, do you go for them on the basis that the risk is not much, plus also the interest far better, or will go there in the World Bank because maybe we have been influenced in regard to who's there and all of those, at what extent? But for me, it's about the benefit without putting so much pressure on the, not necessarily on the fiscus, but also in regard to where now the departments also have to take into consideration, taking also consideration that the accounting officers of these departments, they also have to take a responsibility at the end. They are the authorities, I mean the financial authorities. But what I'm saying is about, we don't want a situation where a provincial treasurer transfer the risk to the departments, because there was a time in one of long ago in health where it was about, we allow you as a PT, you can do ABC. And then I said, then take responsibility. They said, no, it's you, health, you must take. I said, no, I refuse. I'm not going to do it, but it's you must take responsibility. So it shouldn't be that we have created a platform for you. Now we're handing it over to you can, yet now the provincial treasurer take a back seat. And instead of, because there is, I can't remember now in terms of PFMA, where the PT can take some of the risk away from the accounting officers in regard to all of this. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Member Heron, and then Member Lacker.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I just want to start on the third slide, I think, which is the alternative and blending finance policy framework in context. And it seems to be linked to the provincial strategic plan and the growth for job strategy. But I want to go back a little further and find out when this work started, if it only started around these strategy frameworks. Because in 2019, the Premier announced that the province would borrow funding in order to implement an infrastructure program. And in 2021, the Premier announced an infrastructure financing entity, and that there would be infrastructure finance expert panel that would be appointed to structure this infrastructure financing entity. So have we only just started the work now, or did it start in 2019? Did we appoint a finance expert panel? And are we establishing an infrastructure financing entity? I go to the next slide, which is your off-balance sheet, on-balance sheet instruments. Maybe just a little explanation from Provincial Treasury on what partial credit guarantees mean in practice, and syndicated loans, what that would mean in practice, particularly since it's in the off-balance sheet list. Then also on all these instruments, would the provincial treasury or the provincial department that wants to employ one of these instruments be required to follow a process like a tender or a call or request for proposals, or is there some process to select the financing entity that will provide the finance? And that will then bring me to the question around timing, which is towards the end of your presentation, integration with the budget process, where you have this timing that seems to start in June and end in March. If there is a process or a tender or a competitive process, can all of that be achieved in that period from June to March, which I assume is just an example? And then if it is achieved, how does it look on the budget that is tabled in the provincial parliament in March for adoption? If it's an on-balance sheet instrument, is it tabled as part of the MTEF budget? And if it's off-balance sheet, is it still contained in the provincial treasury's estimates of expenditure and revenue, or is it reflected elsewhere? And then my final question, just about loans in general, and has provincial treasury done any exercise on what the province's borrowing capacity is? Is there a maximum threshold above which would be inadvisable or unfeasible to actually finance that? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Heron. Member Lacker, and then we'll go into answers, and then do any of the additional members that might have questions.
No, thank you, Chair. Maybe I'll start from the last question that Member Aaron asked. And on it, Chair, I want to understand. I see there's provision made for a feasibility study. But in terms of the detailed design of that feasibility study, we don't know what it entails. But then coming to the question, Chair, in terms of the borrowing powers that the province may have, I want to understand in terms of the cash flow, how will that be managed over its life cycle? But also key to that, Chair, is to understand as and when we borrow money from these loan sharks, Ngabula Member Mbombo, what would be the contractual obligations attached to the borrowing of these finances from the loan sharks? What provisions also, what guarantees do we have that we may be afforded or borrowed the amount that would so dearly require in order for us to adequately manage the projects that we may have wanted to do? And then coming to issues of major risks associated, Chair, with borrowing monies, what measures would be taken to mitigate? Do we anticipate there would be measures? First, let me start there. Do we anticipate that maybe we may have risks, and what measures we would be putting in place to attend to those risks? Member Mbombo has made an example of something similar to COVID-19. There were risks associated with that, and there were lessons that we have learned. And I want to know, do we anticipate similar risks with this kind of project that we are busy with? And also, Chair, in terms of compliance with PFMA regulations and guidelines, how will this kind of process be managed? Will it solely be at the level of Treasury without any involvement of Parliament through its members, or what would the process be in terms of transparency and accountability? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Member Lekker. Provincial Treasury, over to you to deal with that set of questions, and then we can go for another round.
Thank you, Chair. I think a number of us will be responding. So I'll pass on to my colleagues as and where needed. So I think for the first one, I think a number of the members expressed a bit of apprehension about lending. And I think the thing that we're saying is we are going to be very circumspect about when the province borrows money. And when it does borrow money, that actually has to be approved, first of all, by our provincial minister, but then by the National Loans Coordination Committee and the National Minister of Finance. That is what the Provincial Borrowing Powers Act says. So in terms of how that's managed, there is a clear governance structure and there's clear accountability in terms of that, and who actually approves that is National Treasury. So I just wanted to say that up front. Then in terms of the social impact bond question, so yes, member, I know some things about that in terms of how Health and DSD originally started out together on wanting to do that, and then Health decided not to do it. From what I have understood in my interactions with the Bertha Centre as well as with DSD is that the outcomes, the social impact bond went ahead, and they did actually achieve a 14% return on investment for the investors, and DSD met the outcomes that it wanted to. So your question around the risk with a social impact bond. So government's risk in an impact bond structure is actually quite well managed, because government will only pay if the outcome of, for example, early childhood development is that only if cognitive development is enhanced by X does the government then pay for that outcome. So there is quite a bit of risk sharing, and the structure allows for that. So that's to your question on social impact bonds. Then I think, Malcolm, if you could answer Member Mbombo's questions around sections 63 and 21 of the PFMA, and how those monies will come in, and the PRF in particular. And then perhaps you can hand over to me again for the next member, Heron, and then the third member. I think that might be easiest rather than me jumping around members' questions.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you. Good morning, everybody. Yes, there will be full disclosure in terms of the loans that will be undertaken. It will be reflected in our annual reports and our annual financial statements, and the monies will be deposited into the provincial revenue fund, and then distributed to the departments, or when the financing has to flow as the projects evolve. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Malcolm. And then to move on to Member Heron's question. So I unfortunately was not around in terms of 2019 and the infrastructure entity, so I can't answer there. But on the on and off balance sheet differentiation, so you asked for clarity around what the partial credit guarantee is, and how province will be using that, and also what are syndicated loans. So in this case, the partial credit guarantee, the province would be the beneficiary of that. We would not be issuing that partial credit guarantee. We would be benefiting from it. And there is something actually underway that that uses a partial credit guarantee with the World Bank, and Malcolm can talk a bit more to that if need be. But it's really about saying we benefit from those partial credit guarantee instruments. And the syndicated loans, that is usually a group of lenders who come together and agree to share risk and to sort of structure their debt or equity in a certain way that maybe there's some senior debt, some junior debt, and that debt, that loan is made at a project level, hence it's off balance sheet. It's not made to the Western Cape government, it's made at a project level, potentially through a special purpose vehicle. Then on the question on timing, so I think this is where it does get a little bit complicated, because our project process, so that is not going to necessarily co-occur with the budget process. As you rightfully said, these things can take some time, or the transaction structuring can take 2 or 3 years, and we need to originate and then approve our budget in the space of a year. So we don't foresee, when you're asking about how can you do all of the procurement and those steps in 3 or 6 months, we're saying it's not going to be like that. It's just that when you reach those stages in your ABF project, that's where you can enter into the budget process. So they don't sort of match one to one on top of each other, if that makes sense, member. Then in terms of the off-balance sheet question, and how we kind of monitor those mechanisms. So I think that's something where, and to emphasize, the province borrowing money is one small part of alternative and blended finance. There's many other instruments, and a lot of those are off-balance sheet. And here we have a whole section on risk management in our framework. And that framework speaks to how we are going to manage our risks. And every project needs a risk mitigation matrix. So when we look at that, we look at, are there any contingent liabilities arising from any of the mechanisms? And we are aware that those would need to go onto the Section 66 contingent liability register. And so that is in place, and those mechanisms are in place. Then finally, the borrowing capacity of the province. This is where I'll hand over to Malcolm. Malcolm knows those ratios and numbers, I think, better than most of us. But one thing that we did say in the framework is we are not setting necessarily at the outset macro level borrowing and lending ratios or ceilings. We're addressing that matter on a project by project basis, because so many risks are project specific, as I think the members have been alluding to. And so we're assessing those projects according to that risk and according to our capacity at the specific time, which I think is often better than having larger macro ceilings and limits, and then you actually get yourself into some trouble sometimes. So I think, and then Malcolm, the last question around cash flow, I think would also potentially be better answered by you. So maybe if you could clarify those two questions before we move on to the last question around risk management.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of the credit guarantee is a typical insurance instrument. And we've been working closely with the World Bank about 18 to 24 months about establishing a credit guarantee vehicle. And it's also working, and the World Bank has also worked closely with National Treasury. But in essence, the credit guarantee basically is a form of insurance, and it basically guarantees either in the case of a default or in the case of where the term of the agreement comes to end before delivery of the project. In the case of the credit guarantee, it makes it reduces the risk, and it enables the investor to access capital at a much cheaper rate than would be otherwise required. In terms of the yardsticks, in terms of the benchmark, we must acknowledge that there's little borrowing that has taken place at the provincial level. The only province that has previously borrowed is the Gauteng province, and they've borrowed via the National Treasury. But in terms of the yardsticks at the national level, the yardstick is about 60% of your GDP that you should not exceed, and we are aware that at the national level they exceed it. But at the municipal level, the yardstick in terms of the Section 71 ratios is about 45%. And I think that would be what we would aim not to exceed. And as Chad said, we're going to do it on a project by project basis. In terms of the cash flows, how loans are normally structured, it's either on a biannual basis that you settle or pay the interest and the capital. So that would typically be the case on a biannual basis, that the capital would then be repaid and the interest as well. Thank you.
And so, Chair, just to return to, I think, one of the last question around the risk management, and it's maybe a common theme across the questions, and Malcolm has again reiterated how we do it at a project-specific level, but we also have in our framework that ring-fenced revenue for debt servicing costs. So if we are going to lend money, then there needs to be that asset that we're lending for needs to be revenue generating, and that revenue will be ring-fenced for debt servicing costs. The other thing, one of our principles, is that the revenue should be equal to or exceed the total project cost. So the total revenue generated in the period that we plan to pay off the loan should be equal to or exceed the total project cost. And I think there is, just to again speak to how we've thought about this, is that every single project will go through an affordability analysis. And we have a subsection in our framework around debt management and how we are going to do that. And some of the points and principles I've spoken to now are actually part of how we are going to manage debt and liabilities. So we also know that, there are some instruments that are going to come up against potentially regulatory uncertainties. They're new, they're novel, they're innovative. In those cases, we are very, very conservative. We take the approach to say, okay, what are they? Let's consult with legal services. How does the regulation speak to this? And to make sure, again, we are compliant, that there's accountability and transparency, Chair. I hope that has answered all the questions as best we could.
Okay, thank you very much for those comprehensive answers. I'm going to go into the second round of questions, and I see Member Mbombo's got her hand up. Member Heron has got his hand up. I don't see any other hands, so let's go in that order. Member Mbombo first, and then Member Heron.
Thank you very much for the response. Just the last one, so that we don't come back as a committee and asking you why this project you are not borrowing, whilst the province says there's no money, why not use the same format? So you are saying to me that the projects that you want to prioritize is the one where they could be able to generate a revenue so that you could be able to pay back the monies. So in that sense, it means that the infrastructure projects like the hospitals, again, like Joste, and the some wish hospitals where there's no hospital, like for example, in Bito, you are saying that because they'll never generate, it's a social investment generally, so there's no revenue. So you are saying that you'll be focusing on those where they will be creating the jobs, or also an impact on the narrow definition of impacting on the economy, because health is an investment. But you are saying to me that in those kind of projects you won't be able to, but only those where there will be revenue generation. So I make an assumption that in those projects, then not only is about what will be transparent, is about which finance institution that you will have appointed based on the open tendering system, if there is one, but also in terms of what money you will have received. And then thirdly is about what is the anticipation of the generation of the income from that particular project we are busy with. And then the revenue from those projects will also appear in the annual documentation that comes to the Parliament. Am I correct? Thank you very much.
Member Heron, over to you.
Thanks, Chair. Just 2 or 3 things. Mr. Kapan made the comment that members were apprehensive about lending. I just want to make it clear that I'm not apprehensive about lending. I think where it's financially responsible and we can sustain the lending, we should be borrowing money to fast track or speed up the provision of public infrastructure. So I'm not apprehensive as long as we are obviously financially responsible. The one question I asked about the process of identifying the alternative financing partner was not answered. We can just get that answered. And then maybe this is more or less what Member Mbombo was talking about. Public infrastructures generally not someone else. Public infrastructure is generally not revenue generating. So I'm just wondering how, the extent to which the ring-fenced revenue generating condition limits the opportunity to borrow or to fund using external sources the provision of public infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Heron. I don't see any other hands at this stage. So I am handing over to Treasury again.
Process.
Thank you, Chair. So I think on the matter of are we only limiting ourselves to projects where there is revenue? I think there's also other things to take into account. So grants, there's pledging, there's triple Ps where you're raising that finance at a project level and there is revenue to be derived, but it's not necessarily in the straight up revenue generating asset, as a member said, that some public infrastructure doesn't often generate revenue. So I think in terms of that, then the other thing that you were asking, so how are we going to identify the partner? So I think the partner will be on a project specific basis. But for example, I'll give you an example of how the DSD social impact bond worked, is that there was discussions with the department. The department then had existing relationships with Apex HI, which is a sort of charitable fund. And they came in and the department said, we have 20 million that we usually spend to deliver the services in ECD. Can you match that? And Apex HI said, yes, we can match that. It aligns with our mission and our kind of agenda as a charitable fund. And that was then, they formed a partnership to be outcomes funders. So I think often what will happen with departments is their existing partnerships will potentially determine who might an outcomes funder be if, for example, the instrument is an outcomes fund or a social impact bond. But also it will be part of our due diligence as Treasury. Who is this partner? Are they credible? Is there a relationship? Do they comply with all the laws and regulations related to that? I think, yes, I think, Chair, I've answered, and then Malcolm also will come in here.
Thank you, Chair. And it's also just in the response to Member Heron's question about the supply chain process. With a public institution like the DBSA, you do not be required to follow a SEM process, but with private sector institutions it would require a SM process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I am going into the last round of questions before we hand over to the department for their presentation. Is there any questions from any of the members? Not at this stage. Thank you very much. Minister Simmers, I'm then handing over to you for the presentation from the department.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I will hand over to HD Smith, who will do our presentation. Thank you, HD.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to put up the presentation quickly. Presentation. Chair, can you confirm that you can see that?
Thank you very much. Yes, I can see it on my side. Thanks.
Thank you. So there is quite a lot of synergy between what the Provincial Treasury has just presented and what we will present. And for the sake of time, where they've already touched on the subject, I will just squiz through it. It is also very true, as Member Bombo indicated, that what we are doing is implementing that particular framework. And therefore, you will see the synergies, or I will try and explain it. And in this presentation, we use the roads commodity to explain how we will approach this. So just to say that, of course, the definitions has already been given to you. And here we also just indicate what is the different types of alternative financing models. And just to say, this is not a complete or exhaustive list. In there, you will also see that what we have here is things such as land swaps, because there are instances where, for example, we have a piece of land that is required by National Public Works, and we would need a piece of land that is theirs, let's say for reforms or that we want to enable. Then land swaps is also a way for us to make sure that we don't pay each other for the property, we rather swap the property. The same holds true for municipalities. Then just to say, another aspect that we are also going to explore as a department is corporate social investment. In the country, it's 11 billion rand product where companies actually budget on their books for corporate social investment intervention, and those things are not repayable, but it is so that there's either a positive or a negative incentive attached to it, and that for us is also one that we would like to explore. Moving on, let's talk about the traditional sources of infrastructure financing, because we were asked what is your current sources and what is then the new sources. The new sources was explained by the Treasury, but let's just delve into some of the traditional sources of infrastructure funding, and I will make some examples so everybody's on the same page. There's 4 main traditional sources, but in our context, let's talk about the fiscus, which is the equitable share allocation, and then, of course, the grants. In the context of roads, by way of example, we have the Provincial Road Maintenance Grant that in the main is how we maintain our roads network, and that we then allocate whatever comes from the equitable share mostly to new infrastructure where there is a service pressure for new infrastructure. Then in terms of own revenue, the forms of own revenue in the road space, we have the motor vehicle licenses. In the public works space, we have the leases out portfolio, where we own buildings and we lease them out, that we generate income, and we use that income to maintain the public works portfolio. In the human settlement space, whenever we sell houses to our as part of our FLIS products and others, we generate income, and that is also placed in an asset finance reserve with the provincial treasury. Then, of course, we own land, and where that land is not suitable to build either houses or to build infrastructure, and it's rather more suitable for us to land bank as part of the ecological infrastructure requirements. That's what we would do. Or if it's suitable for agriculture, then look at what interventions we can have with our sister departments as far as agriculture and food security specifically are required. Then there's also user pay, and here the tolls are specifically one of the way of traditional sources of infrastructure financing. For us, it's problematic because all that it means is you pass on the obligation to pay back whatever funding to the user. And that means to our communities, and we have to take into account the current economic climate, the current states as far as jobs are concerned, and then ask ourselves, is this the best possible way to deal with it? For us, the answer is no, and therefore this is not something that we will go to as a first option. Then in terms of public-private partnerships, this is also a traditional way. The problem with this one is it is very, very expensive. It only makes sense in the context of having a program or portfolio of projects. And of course, if you package multiple maintenance projects into one program and then go out to the market to say, can you fund this? We've had previously what we called ESCO contracts. And what that would have been is it was energy saving contracts, which was also an initiative by the Department of Infrastructure, where we actually went to the private sector saying, if you are able across, and that was when we first had load shedding, and it was major load shedding, if you are able to, across the portfolio of the Western Cape, use your own money to install energy saving equipment, and you make a profit, then off that profit, this is the percentage share that you then get paid. Next slide, please. Then if we look at the state of infrastructure, because this is one of the key questions and points then, is to say, yes, there are risks as far as loans and borrowing money is concerned. But what is the risk if we do not do this? The risk is that we cannot address our backlogs simply because we do not have money in the fiscus to talk about backlogs even. Because where we are right now, we can ill afford even our current programs as they stand. There's a risk that we would have no ability to accelerate, and Member Heron has already alluded to this. And of course, there's a risk that we can barely afford building new infrastructure when there is such a huge pressure on the system by way of immigration into the province and others. Then if we look at the state of infrastructure, this is a SAICI national report card. So it's an engineering report card of the country and the state of the infrastructure in the country. And here you would see that this report card indicates infrastructure in general is going backward. There's not enough money for maintenance. We are at a risk of failure, and some of the infrastructure is unfit for purpose. This can be seen, and it's well known to the committee. And one of the examples of this, if you look across the country and you just look at the road network and you see the potholes, and that there now needs to be a specific pothole program, that you see the roads collapsing, that you see even what has happened, the damage to our provincial road network during the floods, then it's easy to understand what are we talking about when we say the portfolio, the infrastructure portfolio is at a risk of failure or unfit for purpose. Then if we look at the provincial road network, just as an example to illustrate what we're talking about, we have about 7,349 kilometers of paved road network and 24,866 kilometers of gravel roads. And the importance of this I will share as we go through the presentation. We've also given you, just in that one slide, a very good idea of what in the road space is the total portfolio. And there you can see we're also talking about 823 bridges, 1,839 major culverts, and so on and so forth. Why is this important? Because if we look at the state of infrastructure, and we do that in our roads asset management plan, which is in excess of a 50-year plan that looks at roads from an asset management perspective, then the question is asked, can we afford our current network? And if we can't, and you have a look at the backlog, how do we deal with the maintenance of that network? What is it that we have to prioritize? How do we go about prioritizing it? And how do we determine actually what is our needs budget, our technical needs budget versus what is the budget that we're getting? And all of this goes back to the question, so should we borrow? Should we find alternative and blended financing? And if we do it, can we do it in such a way that government can still afford its network? So now you look at the network, the total network is about 32,215 kilometers, of which there's a managed network, and I'll explain the difference now, of 17,964 kilometers. The difference between the two is that by law, there's a specific network that we must manage, and that is the kilometers that you see, the 17,000 of the total network of 32,215 kilometers. 28.4 million vehicle kilometers per day is traveled on the managed network, and therefore 96% is traveled on paved roads. Why is this important? It is important because if you look at the recent floods and the disasters that we have since 2023, and you understand that in December of 2023, this department required in excess of 850 million to fix just 70% of the damage brought about by the disasters. And we never got any of that money, so we had to use existing program money. Then you can understand the concern of the department that if we go on as we go on now with any new money coming into the system, that we are not going back to our usual programs, and if we do, it's a setback by at least 2 calendar years. So there is a reason when we talk about, so what is behind the strategy of finding alternative and blended finance? Then just looking further and taken out of our roads asset management plan, referred to there as the REMP, of the paved and unpaved network. If you just look at the unpaved conditions by road length, 45% of our unpaved network is in a fair condition. 37% of it is in a poor condition. Why is this important? Because if you look at what drives the economy of the Western Cape, it's two things. The one is agriculture, and the other one, of course, is tourism. If 30%, 37% of the roads used by our farmers, which is the unpaved roads, is in a poor condition, you understand what that means to the product that we send for exports. If you then look at the paved conditions by road length, then 29% of it is in a very good condition, 33% is in a good condition, 27% of it is in a fair condition. This also shows you what the results is of a policy, an infrastructure policy, saying that if we have a budget, our budget is focused on maintenance, maintaining what we have, and we only build new if it is about job creation and opening economic routes, or if it's a safety program and it deals with traffic congestion, because that has a major impact on the economy. For that reason, one of the minister's core priorities, and I will go to that now, is that it is the intention of DOI to upgrade and rehabilitate 50% of the gravel road network. Okay, so our strategic objectives as they are set out in the REMP is enable an efficient road-based transport network through maintenance and repairs, and I've just showed you that, and to support economic growth and empowerment through road-based infrastructure investment. And this is where we're talking about the upgrade and rehabilitation of our gravel road network. And then, of course, key capital projects that we will build over time. Very few of them, but they are there because they fulfill then these objectives. Here we want to show you the issue that I spoke about, around the road maintenance backlog, and we have this for every portfolio. I simply took out roads as a way of demonstrating this, and in the interest of time. So here we can see, and the main purpose of this slide is to talk about what is the estimated backlog in accordance with our road asset management plan of 2024. Years in theory would require an additional 7 billion rand over and above the current 4 billion that we have allocated to transport infrastructure. And yes, we understand this is too high an expectation. So the difference there is 11.2 billion rand annual capital investment that is needed and that we won't get from the equitable share. Then this is slides that you are very familiar with, and all that we're trying to do here is to tell you when you then go back into the budget, which we have tabled and which we have seen, you will see over time there's a decline in the budget allocation for roads infrastructure. Now, last year, it looked like we had a major increase. All that last year and this year, all that was is we had the money from the provincial treasury, which was about 350 million needed against the backdrop of the 850 million that I told you about earlier. And then, of course, this year, we got a little bit from the National Disaster Management Fund. Then when we go into the Western Cape Infrastructure Framework 2050, the strategy and the implementation plan, when we last briefed the committee, we spoke about the establishment of a singular infrastructure pipeline. The reason for that is that we could have a bird's eye view, and the committee could have a bird's eye view of the entire investment portfolio from an infrastructure point of view in the Western Cape. This would entail national projects for infrastructure in the Western Cape, provincial projects, municipal projects, as well as private sector projects. But the key around it is that it would identify opportunities for collaboration, opportunities for co-funding, opportunities for co-delivery, opportunities, of course, for us to say who should our partners be and what makes the most sense. How do we do this at the cheapest possible rate, but that we optimally use our budgets and that we are able to bring about the infrastructure, the much needed infrastructure investment into the Western Cape. For 25-26, we've also shown you there the infrastructure investment from a departmental point of view and what it is that we will be delivering. And then we've included there the delivery that we are doing for the Health and Wellness Department. We then look at, sorry, one back, Pauline. Go on. Oh, it's forward. There. Then when we look at the application of alternative financing, this department, because we were asked, identify your current models and then look at, then explain the new models. So some of the options that are being explored is, of course, using existing assets to de-risk the development, because what we do have is we have assets that is encumbered, we have assets where the zoning is not appropriate, we have assets that were bought previously for the Department of Education and the Department of Health, and there is nothing in the UMs for the next 10 years indicating that they are going to need that assets, and it's also not appropriately located for human settlements necessarily, or the nature of the asset lends itself to other investment. Then we have outright disposals as a strategy to raise capital. And the reason why we would raise capital is because, of course, this is also a way of securing your loan and showing, demonstrating that you would have the capital as a surety against any loan or front loading or pledging or whatever the instrument is going to be. We also have conditional disposals that we're thinking about. And what that is we use the private sector to say, on this land, what we require is accelerated human settlements delivery to the extent of X. Let's say, for example, you can build 20,000 units on a piece of land, that we say we require 15,000 to be accelerated over 3 financial years or 3 calendar years, and then the rest of it would make up what you require as a payment, so you would have an outright private sale as far as that is concerned. These are some of the ideas that we are having, and all of these, project by project, as the Treasury has said, would be tabled and would be evaluated so that we make sure that we do not compromise the provincial fiscus. Then the pipeline, and we have shown this previously. It's just a reminder, of course, that in building a bankable, investor-ready project pipeline, a systematic approach to reducing risk and enhancing project reliability at every stage has been finalized. This isn't just saying, this is the projects, we want to go out there and borrow. We have no idea how we're going to pay for it. We don't know if this is viable or not viable. None of that. We have a scientific basis for how do we get the projects to being bankable, investor ready. So the first one that we're saying is we do recognize, and Chair has said that as well, that there's existing pipelines. The initial steps then focus on identifying the projects that's existing pipelines, and those will go ahead as they were planned up to the stage that they may find that they do not have enough funding to complete the project. And then, of course, we will bring it back to this principle saying, how do you then get it into the alternative and blending finance space? Then we have a prioritized pipeline. So this is where the last time we spoke to you about our principles and how the criteria and how did we get to the prioritized list of projects. If you can recall, this is where Lapika last time presented, and she spoke about the panoptic principles, which just means these are the overarching principles agreed by everybody. Public sector, private sector, municipalities, national, and ourselves. And this is how we said for each one of the sectors, as Chair has shown you previously, this is how we would prioritize the project in order for us to have a credible pipeline. The other key important message about a credible pipeline, it gives a message of certainty to the private sector. It is not like our current procurement plans where you don't know if something's going to be funded next year. Do you have the funding throughout the 3 years? Don't you have it? Is money going to be taken back? And then the project needs to have a stop-start kind of thing. This is about providing certainty to the private sector, because this is about joining hands saying infrastructure is needed. Infrastructure attract foreign direct and indirect investment, and we all should be committed to make sure that we have the infrastructure that the country needs to take us forward. All this is the same model that you've just seen, but all that we've done here is to align this to the SIPDM or the previous IDMS stages, and this is how National Treasury looks at a project. Is it in conceptual stage? Is it just a thought? Did you do feasibilities? Did you do pre-feasibility? Are you ready to go to the market? Are you not ready? And here I must emphasize the way you go to the market, depending on the nature of the project, is different. If we get an agreement between ourselves and a consulate general of a particular country, you're not going to put that out on open tender. If you have a development and you are asking people to bring their own DFIs into the development, it depends on the nature of how you're going to do that, but that could be a possible way for procurement. The rule here is not the lowest price get the tender, as you might well understand. It is about what is the most viable option, what is the cheapest price for the loan, so to speak. How do you honor that loan or borrowing or even blended finance models? Now, I just want to go back to the blended finance model and maybe give a practical example. When we talk about upgrading the gravel road network, there are a number of parties here that benefits from something like that. The province, agriculture, economic development from a tourism point of view, but also the farmers. And the farmers have indicated to us before that they are more than willing to contribute. And the question here then, and that's why we do nothing without the Provincial Treasury, is to say, Treasury, how do we structure the legal instruments, the contracts, to say that this is how we allow the farmers to contribute, or this is how we allow them to actually deliver the infrastructure privately, but in accordance with our standards. So this is the Western Cape Infrastructure Pipeline, and I do here need to pause and ask the members, this is confidential. This shows where we are planning to deliver, and this shows what it is that we are trying to keep safe in order for us to be able to deliver in accordance with our program. The first one there that you see is Leolo Precinct Development, and that is the one that we actually put out on tender last month. The precinct development there is, of course, for the different human settlements products that we are going to put out into the market, but this is also part of our reforms. And the department is committed to do so. And there you can see the approximate value of the investment. Now, those are just approximate estimated values. When we go out into the market, it could be far more. It might be less. This is estimated values based on the information that we have at the time. The next one to go to market is then Founders Garden Artscape. And there you have the list. And as you see the list there, this is what we are trying to unblock and unlock. And you see there's a distinction between the first table and the one underneath it. The first one is the priority pipeline. It is already being evaluated. And this one is being is investor ready and being put out into the market to explore the development opportunities and partnerships. The second one is the second one there that you see they're starting by George Bypass. The second one is the priority pipeline that's undergoing evaluation as we speak and being prepared so that it can be promoted to that first group. Together, you see the first group is 21.1 billion in estimated investment. The other 12 at the bottom is 98 billion. And so we're talking about an investor portfolio where we stand here at an estimated 119 billion. Then there are large capital projects that we do not have the money anymore for us to do the entire project. The ones that you see there is the ones that we've tabled for BFI funding that have done numerous applications. And then, of course, there's a little pieces, packages out of this that we will do, but we just need to say the asset finance reserve where we normally did our big capital projects from is running out in 26-27. I've already spoken about the gravel road network, indicating that this is something that for us is a key consideration. And the reason for this is, of course, we need to take into account the deteriorating condition of the road network to below acceptable levels of service. We also have the same thing for public works and the same thing for the human settlements portfolio that we will never give to anybody because there's also a portion of the portfolio that talks about leases. And it's that lease portfolio that we have to focus on. How do we generate funding then to maintain it? There's a limited supply of gravel wearing course. We need to look at the effects of climate change. And the reason for that is we can't just do like for like, replace like for like. We have seen recently that when we normally plan, we do the planning in terms of our 1 in a 50 year and 1 in a 100-year floods. That's no longer the case. And for that reason, we need to take into account the factors around climate change. And also for that reason, we've elevated ecological infrastructure as a key component to our hard infrastructure. Underfunding, of course, hampers the planning and execution of routine and periodic maintenance. And specifically the issue around gravel road maintenance is the fact that for us, to get gravel is now considered, and for the last 10 years have been considered as a mining activity, meaning the cost of getting it is through the roof, and then you are lucky if you do get it. That is something that has also led to the backlog of the gravel road network. And for that reason, we do need a new approach. Thus, our issue around upgrading and rehabilitating the gravel road network. Then, of course, one of the other key factors, and I did mention the economic opportunities, is that we want to limit economic or the lack of maintaining the gravel road network, limit economic opportunity by increasing transport costs and, of course, isolating communities from jobs and markets. So I've already spoken to this. The benefits and the key goals for us in terms of the gravel road network is universal access, infrastructure for development, job creation and skills development, because we do believe that when we do maintenance, we create more opportunities as far as jobs are concerned, as opposed to when we do new infrastructure. Then spatial transformation and, of course, catalytic investment. Like I've alluded to earlier, if we lump together maintenance as a portfolio, we believe that we can attract the necessary investment. But of course, it can't deal or it can't happen in the normal traditional procurement methodologies. You can't go to a company and say, I have a 150 or I have a 1.5 billion rand maintenance project for you, but you have to make sure that you do it and that you get paid back in 3 years. It doesn't work like that. That makes for a very expensive kind of borrowing and blended finance offer. And that's it from me, Chair. I hope I have demonstrated what is our current options and our current methodologies and what the new ones are and how we are then applying what the Treasury has put in place. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to the department, HOD, to yourself and the Minister. Members, I'm now going to allow for questions from the floor. If you can just raise your hand and we can deal with it in that manner. I don't see any current hands, which I believe will be a first. If we don't have any questions to the department. We've got one hand, Member Bryant.
Thanks very much, Chairperson. And I think probably one of the reasons for the lack of hands is how comprehensive that presentation was, and I think it covered a lot. So thank you very much. Thank you, as well to the Minister for the introduction at the beginning. I suppose my only question is just how much influence and say does the Minister have in terms of the prioritization of these projects, and how much of it is driven, so to speak, from the official side? I know that there is clearly a linkage between some of the Minister's priorities and what the department is trying to achieve. But how does one get the balance correct in between, obviously ensuring that those two sets of priorities are aligned? Thanks.
Thank you very much. Minister or HOD, over to you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Member Bryant, for a very, very insightful question. There's complete synergy between my ministerial priorities and that of the department. Actually, it's been embedded in the administration, and we do meet regularly on a technical level to ensure the alignment continues. But I think what's also crucial is to understand that we also recognize the value of partnership. Hence the partnership with agriculture in terms of the gravel road network, which we have already identified that phase one of our 50% objective is the first 5%, which is 1,200 kilometers, which to identify and finalize its implementation. For instance, we will be engaging the Minister of Agriculture within the next few weeks, actually, and then we will be meeting Agri Western Cape. But similarly, we also engage our other sister departments because we do believe in a cohesive approach in terms of partnership to ensure that those priorities in terms of the sectoral approach does speak to that one future pipeline with the one vision, but also that we maintain that which we have set out as an objective as a team is also then done in such a way that it takes along all our sister departments with us on this journey as well, because infrastructure is not just one department, it is a department that works and influences and is influenced in terms of outputs by working together with all our sister departments, including Provincial Treasury as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Minister. Is there any other questions from the floor currently? It doesn't seem like there's any questions. So thank you very much, Minister. Thank you very much, HOD. I assume at this stage that I can then, should you want, you are more than welcome to be excused from this meeting. We've only got one that is purely an announcement to make as the last item. So, Minister, do you have any concluding remarks that from yourself or the HOD? Otherwise, you're more than welcome to excuse yourself.
But yeah, I think on behalf of the department, I do want to thank the Standing Committee for a very insightful session. I think we've given you insights into what we are embarking on in partnership with Provincial Treasury as we seek to unlock the true potential of our infrastructure. I'm looking forward to your oversight over us on this journey, which, as you can see, is clearly entering a very exciting phase, a phase where we will deliver on our mandate and also the previous to call on all of us to step up, create job opportunities, but in our case, build infrastructure, but also empower our communities on the journey of true change. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Minister. And like I said, you're more than welcome to excuse yourself should you want. I am now then moving on to the last item that is on the agenda, and that is just for the committee to note that the Portfolio Committee on Premier and Finance from the Northwest Provincial Legislature plans to conduct an oversight visit to the Western Cape. The focus of the visit will be on public-private partnerships, including specific oversight visit to Chapman's Peak. We have not received a date as yet, but once we receive a date from the Northwest Provincial Legislature, we will be in communication to all the members. Should any of the members would like to accompany myself on that visit to Chapman's Peak and speaking with them with regards to public-private partnerships. So that is just a short announcement from my side. PO, can we now go over to the consideration and adoption? I note there is a couple, a fair amount that we need to adopt or to consider and adopt. The first one is for the committee meeting that we had Thursday, the 20th of February 2025. If you can just scroll through and if I can then thereafter get a proposer and a seconder, or should any changes be needed. Those resolutions, we did do the 2050 framework, and that is also why this is now that we are busy with. Prioritize the pipeline projects. We're still waiting on that. Prioritized from the municipality regarding current infrastructure. So 5.1.3, we are still waiting from the municipalities. Yes, I did make a summary of this just for myself as well. Is there any changes that is proposed by the members, or can I just get a proposer and a seconder for that, please? Member Johnson?
I propose the adoption, Chair.
Thank you
Seconded, Chair.
very much. Thank you very much. We can now go over to the 2nd of April.
Just give me 1 second, Chair. I just want to open that.
Thank you very much, Pio. If you can again just scroll through. There we've resolved the bankable projects. We've just received that now in this presentation. And we are still waiting on the briefing by the City of Cape Town on its integration projects. That was, so we're still waiting on that. Is there any changes that any of the members are requesting on this, or can I get a proposer and a seconder on this, please?
I propose, Chair.
Thank you very much, Member Bryant. And if I can get someone to second this, please.
I'll second the adoption, Chair.
Thank you very much, Member Johnson. If we can go over to the meeting of the 2nd of May. Thank you very much, Pio. If we can just scroll through this again. Members, this was the meeting where we were briefed on the from the Garden Route District Municipality and George Municipality. And with regard to the George building collapse, and we, as far as I know, we have again invited Minister Similane on this, and we have 4.2.2 as well. So, and then the community housing project is was moved now to the 2nd of to the 6th of June, if I'm not mistaken. But that was communicated yesterday to the members. Is there any changes to these minutes, or can I get a proposer and a seconder on this, please?
Mbombo proposing.
Thank you, Member Mbombo. Can I get someone to second it, please?
Seconded,
I
Chair.
second the adoption.
Member Heron seconded it. Thank you very much. If we can go to the draft oversight report of the 19th of March.
Chairperson, my hand is up.
Yes, Member Peter.
did we receive that legal opinion, Chairperson?
We received a email. Pio, can you just indicate whether that was distributed to all the members? I remember from.
Yes, Chair, I distributed the response to all members as it was a committee request.
Yes, because I think it was sent earlier in this week. I'm not exactly sure when, Member Petrus, but what I'll do is I'll just forward that to you as well again.
Oh, I see that, Chairperson. I want to know, did we receive a legal opinion in writing?
No, that is the answer that we received up to now. So we will probably make another resolution on the answer that we have received. But yeah, so that is what we received up to now. We are now at the committee oversight report of the 19th of March. The resolutions, EPWP, Ordnance brief committee resolved to request on its EPWP programs. Request a report detailing. So this was with regards to the EPWP projects. Is there any changes, or can I get someone to propose and second this, please?
I propose, Chair.
Thank you very much, Member Bryant. Can I get someone to second it, please?
I'll second the adoption.
Thank you very much, Member Johnson. Then a consideration and adoption of the committee business plan. And these are just the projects that we outlined. It's the petition, it's communique, and it is the building collapse again for the presentation, and then it was the oversight of the Gordon route, Kanaland, Oudtshoorn, Knysna, and George. So that is where we are with this. Can I get a proposer and a seconder for this, please?
Proposed, Chair.
Thank you very much, Member Heron.
I was going to propose that if you need a seconder, here I go.
Perfect. Thank you very much. It was Member Bryant and Member Heron. Thank you very much. And then the last one is the adoption of the draft quarterly report for the period January 2025 to March 2025. And this is basically just all the meetings that we had and all the attendees. Is there, if there's, in the absence of any changes, if I can get a proposer and a seconder for that, please.
Bombo proposing.
Thank you, Member Mbombo. If I can get someone to second it.
I second, Chair.
Thank you very much, Member Petrus. And I can now, if there's anyone that is still still wants to excuse themselves, but I think it's not necessary. But we can, if we can go on to the Pia.
Chair, we still need to adopt the tracking document.
Oh, sorry, I missed that one. Yeah. If you can just fly, is this the tracking document? Yeah. This tracking document, is it being sent to the members? Yeah.
Yes, Chair.
Is it? Okay, perfect. If I can get then someone just to propose and to second this as well. And just when was it distributed to the members, PO? Or is it after this meeting that it's going?
With all of the documents, Chairperson, I sent quite a few.
Okay. All right, perfect. Thank you very much. If I can get a proposer and a seconder for this, please.
I propose, Chair.
Thank you, Member Lacker. If I can get someone to second it. Can I get someone to second it, please?
I will second it, Chairperson.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Member Bryant. That then brings us to the end of the meeting for today. So thank you very much. This meeting is then adjourned, and if the members can just stay behind, that we quickly deal with the resolutions going forward. So members, if there is any resolutions pertaining to the presentations, etc., that we've seen today, is there any resolutions that we would want to take?
Can I come in, Chair?
Yes, you can come in.
Thank you, Chair. Mine perhaps would be information sharing as and when the department enters into partnership with any of the partners, that is maybe on roads, with the farmers so when such happens, can we just be given a heads up that this is the start of the process? Thank you, Chair. My apologies, I'm in transit.
No, 100%. No, thank you very much for that. I agree with that. Especially with a blended approach, I think it's a valuable resolution. Member Bombo, followed by Member Petrus.
So unfortunately, it's not to the infrastructure, but just like we asked the infrastructure to share how their implementation of the blended financing. For me, I'll be interested to hear about. I'm not sure whether it will fall under you, but I'll be interested on the social impact bonds. So I'm not sure whether it will fall under you, but not for the infrastructure.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. If you can just maybe note that, and even if we then have to give it through to what I assume would maybe go to finance, and then then we can handle it in that manner. Member Petrus, your hand was also up.
Yes, Chairperson. On the proposal of Member Lecker, can we have that information before final approval, Chairperson?
Yes,
table at this committee before final approval.
Yeah, so my assumption would be that, and if I understood the resolution, it would be that as the various processes is happening, that the information is shared on the specific identified projects at the various stages. So my assumption would be that it would be prior to adoption. So yeah, that's how I understood the resolution. If not, then you can maybe just amend it as such. Is there any other resolutions that the committee would like to take? I don't see any hands at this stage. Thank you very much, Member Petrus. I see your hand is up again.
Yes, Chairperson, the petition one, what are we going to do about that one?
Oh, yes, we just need to establish a date on the petition. So we've identified the 30th of July or the 6th of August. For me personally, this is, there seems to be a very long history on this. And I think it is really important that we handle this. There's a whole community that is waiting. So my suggestion would be that we go for the 30th of July, which is the earlier of the two dates. If there is any member that does not agree with that, you are more than welcome to raise your hand. But yeah, otherwise, I would really like to handle this sooner rather than later. So the first available date, which is the 30th of July, that we meet on the Greenhaven petition. If there's any other someone that does not agree with that and would rather go for the date in August, please raise your hand now. Otherwise, Pio, if we can, Member Petrus, I see your hand is up.
I agree with the first date, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. So we'll... Perfect. Thank you, Member Lacker. So, Pio, so we can move ahead with that then and deal with that on the 30th of July. Yeah, thanks for that, Member Beatrice. I nearly forgot that one. And yes, then I'll obviously let the date know with regards to the Northwest Provincial Legislature that will be distributed to the members. In the absence of anything else, members, thank you very much for joining this meeting. I think it was very informative. I think we must keep our eyes on this blended finance or alternative finance approaches. It's a new space, and yeah, I think there's. I'm still trying to work out a couple of things in my head with regards to that as well. But thank you very much for the fruitful engagement. If there is, Pio, is there anything else from your side, or can we, can I adjourn?
Chair, maybe that we resolve to obtain the report on that Greenhaven matter that the Petitions Committee dealt with, and then we have a more substantial base from which to work from.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm happy with that. I do think that it came from the meeting as well, but yes. So the resolution can read that we get the full report on the petition prior to that meeting as well. Thanks. Member Petrus?
Yes, the Chairperson, and the one on the legal opinion, what is our position on that?
On the legal opinion, so we received the email that said, Pio, do you have that email on hand?
Yes, Chair, I'll flight it.
If you can maybe flight that just for us.
Just give me 1 second, please.
Thank you very much. So then it says, although what was received is not a formal written opinion, it is formal legal advice and beyond that which has been conveyed publicly as the position in the Western Cape government is in respect of the report. The advice remains privileged. Member Petrus, so that is what we received from the department. Back, if you want to make, I mean, if there's any additional resolution that you would like, then yeah, then I'm happy to, then we can do, you know, can do that. I see your hand is raised.
Yes, Chairperson. Yes, thank you, Chairperson. I think we must insist that we get the legal opinion in writing, Chairperson. There's nothing wrong with it.
All right, what I'll do is I'll handle it and I'll reply on that mail, and then we can handle it in that manner. So yeah, we can deal with that, no problem. Is there any other points that needs to be raised, or can I send everyone on a happy weekend on this Friday morning? It is now just over 11:30. Thank you very much, members, for a very fruitful discussion and questions and meeting. It is really appreciated. And with that, then I am adjourning this meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day. Stop recording.